And in that moment when my 4-day-old son was in my arms crying, I looked down and my intuitions were silent. There was nothing. And for the first time, I felt the gap in my mother line. I felt where the wounds were. And it sat right at that mother nurture level of development. And then because my mother was a motherless child, so it just, you can just see it and you can feel it. And that's that generational wound, how it regurgitates and comes back down through. So that was the first moment for me where I felt the mother line and the break in that. And so that for me just was like, right, if I can feel this, or not feel it, then I know that there's something I can do about this. I know that there's a way I can regain what I need to do. I can regain my intuitions. And so it was a long road, and we're now in a good place. But of course, it's a lifelong journey, healing. It never ends. There's no certificate that tells you you've passed.
That's so true. There is no certificate at the end of this.
No, there is not. No, it's a road you choose. It's a courageous road to choose in life, to become a cycle breaker and to feel the pains that your past generation weren't able to, and to allow them to shift and fall. So, but it's such important work at the moment globally, and seeing women and mothers stepping into this role and becoming those cycle breakers is really empowering. And for me, it's just an honour and a pleasure to be part of this movement and this generation of healers and this generation of women who are being part of returning and giving our wisdom and knowledge on that we've learned from a lifetime of regaining.
Unleash the untapped potential within you as we dive fearlessly into the realms of healing, personal growth, self-love, and uncharted territories of the human experience. Join us as we navigate relationships, conquer career and business milestones, and explore the depths of spirituality. This isn't just a podcast, it's a manifesto for the resilient, the ambitious, the soul-searching women and men of today. Grab your coffee and let's dive in with Beyond the Surface. Welcome back to another episode here on Beyond the Surface. And today I have been long awaiting this beautiful conversation with you, Martine. Thank you so much for being here with me. I'm so grateful and honored. And this is just a conversation that I have been just so curious about. There's such a curiosity in where we're going to go and what we're going to dive into, and to hear more about your journey and your story. So first and foremost, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's taken a while for us to get here, but I appreciate your time in working this out.
So I would love to start off. I know you're the heart and soul behind doing some beautiful, incredible work around our motherhood, like our mother wounds and that work. And so I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about who you are.
My name's Martine. I live in Devon, UK, with my partner, who I've been together with for 16 years. We've got 3 boys who we home educate, 2 fluffy dogs, and we just live a very easygoing, slow life where we just get to organically live through each day. We just talk with our children daily. We're available and open with our children. So we just have so many fruitful conversations throughout our days. And we just live at a really comfortable pace where we just have inner peace, safety, comfort. It's taken a very, very long time to get here, but this is where we are now. So I guess my work is in all the healing that's required to undo the generations of wounds that sort of sit within our families, so that we can begin to find that inner peace again, because so many people live with inner chaos in their worlds, and they just don't know where to begin to even start to unravel that. And this is something that actually started with me when I was very, very young. I became aware as a young child that, well, I guess the wounds in my family's past were still impacting my family to that day. And I knew that that would have an impact on me. Intuitively, there was a knowing that the gaps in that knowledge being passed down through the mother line, it was important. And so that kind of, for me, sort of set in place a lifelong mission and passion to delve into this and to explore it and to open it up and unravel it. And it's been, for a very long time, it was a very private, personal, inner journey that I was going on of observing human nature and trying to find the nature within humans again. Looking at our communication, our interactions, and just I just observed human nature everywhere I went. It became something that just inwardly I was always working on to try and piece this together and work out what these missing links were. And so it's been a journey of many sort of stages, and stepping into motherhood really, I guess, rocketed and really kicked off that another level of diving into this to sort of really bring healing. And it became, I guess, a 15 years of dedicated study, working, experience, courses, of just sussing all of this out. And it's been an incredible journey. And so I'm now just at a point where I'm ready to start bringing my work online and start bringing my unique program out to the world. So it's, yeah. That is the short version of a little bit about me, I guess.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I hear often from a lot of incredible, beautiful mothers that I'm surrounded by. I'm not yet a mother myself, but I'm surrounded by so many incredible women who are mothers. And one of the things that I hear very often is how the journey of becoming a mother like amplifies in ways this healing or this work, that inner work that we go through. And I'm curious, what amplified in for you as you said, you mentioned that it's kind of skyrocketed when you went into motherhood. So what was it that you noticed?
So before motherhood, I always thought that if I was to change my behavior so it wasn't the same as what I was seeing when I was growing up, and if I was to change those external parts of me, that was me healing, and that was me changing, and that was me repairing and fixing. And so when I first became a mum, and my son was 4 days old, and I was holding him in my arms, and he was crying, and my intuitions and my wisdom and my gut feelings have really guided me my whole life. They've been a really powerful part of my own sort of strength and survival. And so they've always spoken to me. They've always guided me in the right direction, and I've always lived and trusted by them. And in that moment when my 4-day-old son was in my arms crying, I looked down and my intuitions were silent. There was nothing. And for the first time, I felt the gap in my motherline. I felt where the wounds were. And it's that right at that mother nurture level of development. And then because my mother was a motherless child, so you can just see it and you can feel it. And that's that generational wound, how it regurgitates and comes back down through. So that was the first moment for me where I felt the mother line and the break in that. And so that for me just was like, right, if I can feel this or not feel it, then I know that there's something I can do about this. I know that there's a way I can regain what I need to do. I can regain my intuitions. And so it was a long road, and we're now in a good place. But of course, it's a lifelong journey, healing. It never ends. There's no certificate that tells you you've passed.
That's so true. There is no certificate at the end of this.
No, there is not. No, it's a road you choose. It's a courageous road to choose in life, to become a cycle breaker and to feel the pains that your past generation weren't able to, and to allow them to shift and fall. So, but it's such important work at the moment globally, and seeing women and mothers stepping into this role and becoming those cycle breakers is really empowering. And for me, it's just an honour and a pleasure to be part of this movement and this generation of healers and this generation of women who are being part of returning and giving our wisdom and knowledge on, that we've learned from a lifetime of regaining.
Yeah, I so agree. And I'm kind of having this like beautiful aha moment. This happens so many times as I'm in conversation with people, but this like aha that's kind of coming through in this moment is how, you know, I feel like I've been on my own inner journey of really coming to a spot of real, like, I find in society, it's become very normal. It's kind of like the road is you go to school, you find the job, you get married, you have kids. And I got to a point where it wasn't necessarily that I was kids are off the table, but it was like, am I this feeling or this questioning and curiosity of, do I want kids? Is this, that questioning
Mm-hmm.
piece?
Mm-hmm.
And so for a moment I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want kids, but I knew as well with digging deep and really leaning into that, it was a lot of fear that was more so coming up of just, like fears of my raising a child. You know what I mean? There's so much responsibility, there's so much of that. And so what I'm the kind of this aha moment that's coming through as I'm listening to you too is how going through this process, and I imagine too, if I am blessed with the opportunity of having kids, I think about how it's the integration of all the years that I've been doing my own healing and my own work on myself and even my own lineage stuff too, and how becoming a mother and that transition into that journey is going to be like this beautiful integration phase of everything. And how interesting is that in when we're going on this healing journey, it's not always just constantly sitting in doing the work. There's this piece, this element of integration that we often forget. Sometimes there's people who are kind of going into all these programs, into all the coaching and doing all of that, and then they forget that time of being by themselves and being in this space and allowing the integration of everything that you have learned to actually play out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just this layer of, wow, like it almost like I guess in a sense, like a disservice if I canceled out having kids. Like I would be missing out on this
Mm-hmm.
integration period as well. I don't know why
Yeah.
that came through.
Yeah, because you go through a process of seeing that there's a way beyond just thinking about it and understanding it in your head.
Yeah.
Because when you step into the experience of feeling it and knowing it, then it becomes real and it becomes tangible, and those thoughts in your mind can then move forward. You can then elevate to the next thought process, the next looking forward, the next vision, whatever it is that's coming through next. So yeah, it is, and it is something that many people can just sort of fall into that trap through healing, of continuously healing and healing and healing. But you have to, it has to be visible in your lived experiences. There has to be tangible changes in how you're communicating, how you're having relationships, how you're mothering. If you're not seeing the tangible changes in your life, then the work you're doing is still separated from your world. And I think that's the thing, is when you step into becoming a mother or in a family or your relationship, all of a sudden that healing is then being done in conjunction with someone else. And quite often our wounds happen to us when we're in a relationship. So healing them on your own heals them to a level. But when you heal them in a relationship with a partner, you go to the root and you go right to the cause. And then you really, really start to unpick the dark shadows that sit between you. So it does take it to another level on many elements. But all of them, if you can see it, if you can feel it, if you can allow for the experiences to happen and move through it, then it just takes you to such a peaceful place inwardly in your mind and in your body, and it's lush.
Yeah. Oh, I so yes to all of that too. And I think what's interesting is hearing you say that a lot of our wounds happen in relationships. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, of course, we're going to be triggered in relationships as well. And yeah, I don't think I've ever heard someone kind of piece that together. And there's so much truth to that. There's so much truth to how, and it comes back to this, this intention, right, around this conversation about mother wounds. And I'm curious too. I feel like depending on if you're kind of in the work of looking at ancestral healing and that element, I mean, that's a term that I'm very familiar and I hear a lot of people talking about and using. But in your own experience, like, what are some of the mother wounds that we see playing out?
Well, the biggest mother wound that many of it goes right back to the very core. It goes right back to the very start of where that mother-daughter, mother-child relationship should be happening, where these wounds occur, is in those first 3 months following birth, when we should be babe in arms, where we should be being nurtured unconditionally by our mothers. We haven't had that experience. And so that's really impacted how our brains have developed and how we've been able to then move through into our development and into our growth throughout life. So when you haven't received that nurturing mother's love as a baby, as a newborn baby, it doesn't create that pathway in your mind. So when you step into becoming a mother yourself, your brain doesn't have that pathway to go back to know how to then be able to give that yourself.
It's interesting because I think too, I'm like, but then, I mean, as for myself, I don't remember much of, like, there's just gaps, right? There's gaps of actually physically remembering. And yet I think no matter what, like, there's always going to be this feeling. I mean, I come from a single parent household and it was like my mom running the show, you know. She was there and she wasn't at the same time because she had to work, you know, multiple jobs to put food on the table. But there was always this sense of knowing and feeling that she was there, that we had the support, we had this, we had that.
And that's where the truth lies. The truth lies
exactly
in the feeling. You know, you can't lie. That doesn't lie. If the feeling's there, the feeling's there. If the feeling's not there, you don't know what you've not got.
Yeah. So what does that look like? And does it, I'm curious, do we only see that wounding when we go down this journey, this path of motherhood, or do we see it in other ways in our lives?
Of course. Yeah, of course it's shown in other ways. It's shown, it comes across in all of your friendships, your relationships, the level of people who you hang out with, your habits, your health, your wealth. It shows in all areas of our lives. It shows in the chaos that we live in, or it shows, you know, so it is a direct influence onto how we live our life, how able we are to stay safe in relationships and stay connected with our families, so that we've got someone there when you know you have a crisis and, I don't know, say you end up with nowhere to live, you've got family to go to. Or if you need a bill paying and you've got family to go to. What happens when you don't have that? You know, if you don't have that thing to fall back on, that family, that safety, that unit to fall back on, then, you know, it leaves us with not a lot.
Exactly.
So it's such an important part of it.
And so what's been your kind of journey with healing the mother wound? What does that look like?
Wow. Healing the mother wound. Painful. Releasing, freeing, mind-blowing. Leaves you acknowledging that everything you'd ever thought you'd known is not what it actually is, and it's all something completely different. It changes everything. I think my partner described it really well. He said, going through this because we've gone through a lot of deep healing together, myself and my partner. We've sort of broken open trauma bonds that have sat in the middle of our relationship for, you know, many years, and we've done a lot of deep healing together. And he said, you know, the one thing about this journey is that before we started it, he said, I always felt like a child inside. He said, but now I feel like an adult. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like that inner version of you that always feels like a child. Like, you know, oh, that imposter syndrome, or that is everyone looking at me, that judgment, that fear of judgment, all those things that stem from that inner child within us. It's like they've gone, and it's like we just feel like adults now. So we've repaired our development, we've repaired the damage to the dysfunction to our brains and those pathways in and unhealthy habits of connection, and we've healed them and done a lot of change. So it's been a really it's a really profound journey. Doing it on my own was incredible. Doing it alongside my partner is something, is like a cherry on top. I never expected to go through something like that with someone who you already love and you're already committed to then go to that next level of relationship and just be like, wow, this I've never felt this safe. So yeah, it's a huge thing to do for yourself and for your future generation, and for healing your ancestors, for healing those wounds in the past that never got spoken, that never got heard, that never got shifted, that never got released. So yeah, it's a big journey to go on.
It is, and the acknowledgement as well of it's not easy. It's not easy to kind of step into this place of healing, and like you kind of mentioned, the cycle breaker. It's not easy, and I think there's been for me so much connection to the female lineage, the mother lineage in my world, and just being able to really see just see like the woundings that occur and come up, and being able to be in a space where being able to see like the impact that it has, because I have also my sisters who are older than me, and then there's my mom, and of course my grandmother, and it's like it's so beautiful to witness that. And that's why I have this firm belief that the work that we do on ourselves plays this role and has this ripple effect.
Yeah.
Even if they themselves are not necessarily going through and doing any of the work, it matters, and it is truly incredible. Because of, I think too, is we forget how powerful in ourselves and what that creates. I'm trying to like put this into words, but just becoming and believing differently, and the way I show up in my relationships with my sisters, with my mother, then there's this little bit of like transformation that also occurs in them, in the way that they show up. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's healing, even though they might not even see that they're doing it.
No, but they feel it again. You get that change because they felt it. And when you heal something and you release the burden of something that's been weighing you down, it shifts and changes your energy, and you give off a different energy, and then you step into that situation feeling different. So you instantly are giving a different experience to the other person, so the response you get back is different. And so through doing that one simple action, you've created a new pathway for them in their mind to understand and navigate that situation with. So it's absolutely changing and healing. And it was only through doing that myself that this snowball effect happened in my family. I was like, right, my family is in chaos. I looked around, 8 years ago, I was just like, I feel like my family is crumbling around me. And I was just heartbroken. I didn't know what to do. And I was just like, no one's going to come in and fix this. No one's going to step in and because nobody can see into this family in the way I can. Nobody understands all of the dynamics and how everything is pieced together like I do. So I was like, well, I need to fix this. So I did. And I started, as you say, start to slowly realize that, hang on, I need to start saying how I feel. I need to start sharing what's going on. I need to start saying these things, because otherwise I'm never changing. And just by doing that, and just by changing how I interacted with the children, and my partner seeing a completely different response from them than what we would have normally got, it awakens people, because they're feeling something different. They're seeing something that they don't understand, but they know it's better. Because it feels better. And so you just draw people in because it feels right, it feels good. And then it just tumbleweeds. And like you say, it has that snowball effect where it just ripples out. And this is the magic of the work that women do. This is our intuition. We weave our little webs all over the place, and we just share our wisdom and our magic around. And this is how we're going to bring that change and bring that healing, because this is how we should be doing it.
Do you see a difference in, specifically around the mother wound, do you see it kind of show up or play out differently between women and between men?
Yes, of course. There's always that yin and the yang, isn't there? Because they're their role, their drive, their perspective in life comes from a completely different standpoint than we do.
Yeah.
And so receiving feminine energy, nurturing energy for them means something different than it means to us as women. So it has a completely different impact. And of course, as women, we go on to have relationships with men. So that relationship may not have been wounded, or it may have been, but with boys, they go on to have relationship with women, and that can too easily reflect that mother-daughter, that mother-son relationship. So for them, it's got that added angle to it that of that. Whereas I guess for women, we don't have that element, but it's we have our own different perspectives.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's so beautiful to, just be in this space of the healing that we can offer and what we can bring, and the power in both. Like, we say the yin and the yang, and it's like both the feminine and the masculine, and how I think this conversation keeps coming up, and maybe it's because I need to hear it over and over again, of just how we need both. We need both in who we are, in our relationships. This is such a big piece, just having and finding the dance and the balance and the harmony between both of these energies.
Yeah. And finding partners who you can heal with and together is tough, but it's possible and it's doable. But I know so many women who are mothers of sons, and this is the next place where we get to bring change and bring healing, is by raising our sons to be emotionally mature and have emotional intelligence and be able to have communication and conversations. So we're now getting to bring what's needed to that next generation of sons, so that they are able to sort of bring back that balance, because they're being raised by mothers who stand in their intuition and their strength and in their role as mother within the family, which again enters into every tiny corner and orifice, in every tiny corner of the whole family. We weave our webs throughout everywhere. We're planning 5 years in advance. We're looking at how things are going to map out. We work in this role, and it's a tough role, and to do it in the society and the way that mothers are being expected to mother now is really tough. There's no time to mother. Your children are hardly with you. They go to nursery younger and younger, so we're having so much of this time with them removed from us. But there's massive waves of communities who are home educating now and bringing change to this and world schooling, and it's wonderful to see, because these kids are getting to live and grow authentically with emotionally mature parents.
That I've always said about the school system is just we're not taught that. There's like find me something that's integrated. Find me a class that's integrated where you are learning emotional intelligence, and if you're not actively seeking out, you're not going to experience that in the school system. And again, unless you have a teacher, teachers have such a huge role. Unless that one teacher is planted, it's not going to be there. It's not going to be existent. And I'm not surprised that a lot of people are going down this route of wanting to have their homeschool their children and integrate that, because it's different, especially if you yourself are not in alignment with the school system. Like I understand that. And honestly, it's something that I dance with now too. And I'm like, it's just an interesting thing to think about. And,
But again, that's where the difference in thinking and feeling it is as well, isn't it? Because when you have children who are in school and you're feeling what this is doing to them, that's where those feelings take over the thoughts, because you can think it and not know whether you would or wouldn't. Because if your children went to school and it was all fine, you'd probably carry on, even though you might think in your mind it would be a nice thing to do. But as soon as you feel how this is impacting your children, and you're starting to see how this is negatively impacting them, and you have that and you feel it, then you go, it removes the thought. and it becomes a knowing, because you can feel it and sense it. So it's really good to have these kind of thoughts in your mind about, would I do that, would I not do that, because you're going into things open-minded, aren't you? And you're going into things not having that agenda, not knowing.
Yeah, 100%. The one area too that we kind of you were mentioning a little bit too is, the safety of healing in relationship. And was it always like that in your partnership? Was there always this sense of safety in your relationship? And if not, how was that safety created? Because I think that's such a big piece too, right? Like there's, in relationships, there's one person who's kind of on this journey and on this path, and maybe at one point the other person's catching up, but maybe that there's just not that piece. But
It's always a tag team.
safety, yeah, it
I think the
is,
whole
but
journey is
safety's
a tag
huge.
team. Because when you unravel something in a relationship, it then automatically unravels something for your partner. So it is very much this yin and yang of weaving through what these different things unravel. But no, it's not always felt safe. I've always been safe, but I've not always felt safe. So for too many years, I've been safe in my relationship. There's no concern, but inwardly, I didn't know how to feel safe in authentic, intimate, safe relationship connection. Neither of us could do that.
Wow.
And that's the thing that took a lot of years to unpiece, because within that sat all the trauma bonds and all the misguided ways of communicating through emotions and energies and pleasures and relationships. It twists and tangles it all, where all those sort of little traumas and roots sit within you. So it didn't always feel safe. But
thank you for that. I think I needed to hear that piece. That was huge. Woo! That made me emotional to think too, because I think, sometimes, there's just like this feeling of safety, and there's this knowing that I am safe, and the feeling of it is not always necessarily there. And how do we feel safe? How do we get to that place of feeling safe? Have you landed in that space? And if so, you can shed some.
Yeah. It's feeling safe in connection with somebody, feeling safe because you can see into that person as if you can see into yourself. You can feel into that person as if you can feel into yourself. You feel you've lived that person's life as if you've lived it yourself. You feel safe because your connection is whole. And me and my partner say, we say it's ridiculous. We feel like the other half of each other, but not like each of us is a half. We feel like our wholes just slot together perfectly. Our values are so balanced in our personalities and our characters, and it all just, we both just feel so whole and able to communicate freely without any worries, able to kind of live through the natural emotions that come about a day without it causing eye rolls or miscommunication. So it just, safety sits in those places where you can just sit safely, be exactly your authentic self within your own home, and knowing that you're being seen and held. And if your partner sees that you're having a bit of a wobble, rather than them taking on that wobble and that emotion, they come and offer you the exact support or care or whatever it is that you're needing in that moment, rather than trying to fix it or stop you feeling it. They hold you, they hold space for you. So it's again, it's one of those things that having that safety in relationship, it affects every part of it. Again, it's like healing. It affects every part of your life.
100%. What is there anything like tangible that you and your partner did to almost, I guess it's kind of like we have to rewire, we have to recreate those habits, right? Because sometimes sometimes we react and it's like it just happens, and then you pause and you're like, wait, why did I even just react like that? It's actually, it's not about me. And then it's like, we're correcting, we have to correct these behaviors that we naturally have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking on when your partner is upset and feeling something. And instead of just letting that be and holding space for them, we kind of take it on, and then we're emotionally adding to the situation and the whole piece. And then it's this whole thing that it doesn't have to be. Like how did you create this shift in your
So the
partnership?
shift in that comes from, you have that moment and you'll continue to have those moments and those experiences. And so once you've had them, is then once you're both back in yourselves, back in your bodies, back calm again, it's being able to have those difficult conversations of sitting down and going, right, okay, so I'm going to speak to you and I'm going to let you know my perspective of that situation. And this was my perspective. You talk about your own feelings, your own viewpoint, and you speak nothing of the other person. And then the other person says their perspective. And then you see where the wires were crossed. And then you start to go, okay, well, why did you doing that make me feel rejected? And then you start to then piece it back and go, okay, well, actually that feeling of rejection isn't from you, it's from my mum, or it's from whatever. And so you literally have to, when these things come about, unpick them and look at them and look at the emotions that it brought up in you and go, okay, well, it made me feel angry. Why did you not filling the dishwasher make me feel angry? That's ridiculous. So let's work out why it made me feel angry because I'd asked you to do that and you didn't do it. And then I felt like I wasn't being heard and that I wasn't being listened to. And that was what my child, so you have to start analysing and really looking at these emotions and repeated patterns that keep coming up, repeated cycles, repeated behaviours that just keep playing out in your relationship. Most people will probably have a cycle in their relationship that they repeat. It might be monthly, it might be yearly, it might be every 5 years, but there's a cycle that they always go around. And those repeated cycles are where all those trauma bonds are sitting in the relationship and where all those wounds from your childhood and your past are still impacting you. So it's like the shadows that sit between you. You have to unpick them and get the light into them so you can remove it and free yourself, So it is just really having really brave conversations and going. And once you've done it once and you get through it, and then the next time it happens, you recognise it and it's easier. And you're just like, it was that easy to remove something that's caused us repeated issues for 10 years. What? How was it that easy? But it feels so scary having that first conversation. It feels so scary speaking out for the first time and saying, actually, what you said upset me. It made me feel sad. It made me feel rejected. It made me feel abandoned. Saying that can feel like you're about to cause the biggest shitstorm ever. But actually, you're speaking your feelings and no one can ever argue with your feelings. No one can ever disagree with how you feel. And as long as you bring it from that place, this is how I'm feeling because of that. That's it. You just need to learn how to start speaking it. So it's jumping in and getting into the hard stuff and having uncomfortable, difficult conversations that just bring peace. And life is so much easier.
It is though too, because that's the other side, is when we don't have the conversation, what happens in our own space is we are unraveling and going into this downward spiral of in our own minds. And then and there's evidence. I can guarantee that if anyone really sits with like, okay, where have I had to have I also love how you said brave conversations. I really love that. I resonate with that because they are so brave to have these conversations, especially when communication is not something that existed in your family, in your childhood growing up. But that piece around these conversations, there's evidence. I can guarantee there's evidence when you've had the conversation, you're like, oh, I just feel so much better. And oh, guess what? It really wasn't that big of a deal than it was, right? And that's what happens in our own space. And in this downward spiral, we're thinking about all the possibility what ifs of, well, if I say this, then they're going to say this. And we do this whole that used to be me and my story and why I would keep my mouth shut. And I didn't have the brave conversations ever, and oftentimes it looked like I didn't care when I didn't know it was almost like as if like I had like a muzzle on at
Mm-hmm.
times in relationships when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Someone fully communicating how they felt, how I made them feel, and I would say nothing and I would stay silent.
Yeah.
Nothing came up. And yet in my brain, I'm having the whole entire conversation. I'm responding.
Mm-hmm.
It just
But
literally
those
wasn't
two
coming
parts of
out.
you are disconnected. Because if you were
Exactly.
never raised to speak those thoughts, your body's never experienced speaking them and doesn't know how to. It literally doesn't know how to. So learning how to do it is like learning a new skill. And all of a sudden you learn that it's just as easy to speak outwardly as it has been inwardly. What? Whereas
Yeah.
actually you've grown up in a world where that had never been spoken and you'd never spoken your inner self outwardly. And then all of a sudden people start, like for the first time when I met my partner, he was the first person who ever saw me inwardly. And he started to notice how I would be understanding and making sense of the world, or he saw my skill set and my value. And I was just like, what? No one's ever seen that part of me. No one's ever seen that part of me. So it being seen is such a huge part of it all as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's such a core need that all of us as humans want to feel seen. And so, and that I have seen brings that level of understanding, and simply knowing that it's not just knowing that for ourselves. Yes, we want to feel seen.
Mm.
But when you can bring that into, my partner wants to feel seen, my sister wants to feel seen, my mother wants to feel seen.
Mm-hmm. Compassion.
It can transform so, like, just the area of your relationship, just that acknowledgement piece, that seeing piece in other people.
Yeah.
It's interesting how they show up a little differently when you just
Yeah.
acknowledge something in them, when you see them.
Yeah, that's it. It's when you come into situations from compassion.
Yeah,
I think that's it, isn't
yes.
it? Is and that's the bit that we're bringing back in. That's a massive part of our mother wounds that was missing, was that compassion, that connection, that authentic connection. And I think that by doing that, we're just bringing that back in, bringing compassion to seeing people and hearing them and being able to interact with the stories that they're speaking about, and give guidance and give, just be a sisterhood again. Just start communicating and sharing our stories. And
Yeah. And bringing that piece that you just said too, the sisterhood, bringing that into our own relationships with our own families. It's not just, the sisterhood that you find outside of your family. It's really important to bring that back into your family too, and even kind of take out or remove this label in times of, you're my mother, and instead we see human to human, we see sister to sister, woman to woman. And I feel like that piece, stripping back that layer of my parents, has allowed me to really deepen this level of compassion for them, for, decisions that they made and how it impacted my life. But seeing and understanding and having compassion for them in those decisions has just allowed me to love them in a whole other level, like not for me, it's more so like my dad, right? Like I don't fault him anymore for the decisions that he made when I was young and leaving. And it's like, he was 20 at the time, right? And so who was I when I was 20? When we can see this, I don't know, it just brings this different level of compassion that we can have in our relationships, and be able to really see.
Yeah, and I think it takes an awful lot to get to that place. Sometimes I think there's circumstances where it can be a really hard journey to get to a place of having that reconnection and that compassion for, and being able to give. It's one thing feeling that compassion for them, but it's another thing being able to give it when you're in the presence of them, if it's a challenging relationship. And I think that's one of the blessings of the work that I do with Motherlines, is that it shows that we can heal our motherline still away from our families, because those relationships sometimes are too difficult to be able to regain that wisdom and flow through. So being a mother and finding a crone, finding someone who's a grandma who you can have that relationship and have those connections with, finding those communities and sisterhoods where there are those people who are in that position of mother or of crone that you're needing, so that you can still have and regain and get what you're needing, even though you can't have it from the families that you were raised in. So I think that that's the blessing of social media, of our modern world, is that actually what should be, as you're saying, it should be that wholesomeness within a family of those connections and that compassion and seeing each other. But so many places, so many families, it's so far broken from that they're having to look outwards and find places to get the feelings of receiving that wisdom and nurture from someone who's a mother or a grandmother, having that feeling of sitting with sisters and talking and communicating, so that you have those experiences within you to help you and guide you through that journey within your family as you try to get to that place of having that ultimate compassion, acceptance, wherever it is you're trying to get to with it.
Thank you for saying that. I often forget. I think I always come from, of course, my own perspective and my own lens of which I've lived my life, and that also reminds me to have this deep sense of gratitude that I've been able to do this with my parents and be able to have these experiences of healing. But I also just had this aha moment of probably what's made it a lot easier to have my own healing with my father is the fact that I had a stepfather in my life, and I've never had that acknowledgement.
And you're piecing these things together.
Never had that. I just never understood how that played such a big role. Wow. So interesting. But
because you already knew what a healthy father looked and felt like.
There it is. Wow.
Boom. Generational. So we are a product of what we felt and experienced. Our brain only knows our own experience. It knows no one else's.
Yeah, exactly. So but it's such a good reminder to remember that that's not always going to be the case for everyone. It's just not real and it's not existent, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible to be able to.
It means it's your experience. Yeah,
exactly.
It means it's an experience. And there's nothing there's nothing that gives me greater joy and pleasure than seeing healthy, authentic mother-daughter family relationships. It literally it fills my heart. It's a wonderful gift. It's a golden ticket in life to have received a healthy family who you can be yourself and feel safe and be authentic in. So it's wonderful. It's a perspective that's real. So
100%. Oh, this has just been so good. I always love to end off conversations. If you were to distill your life's journey into like one piece of advice, whatever feels true right now, what would be this piece of advice that you would leave?
If it's to heal your generational wounds, it's to go back and heal your mother lines. If you've not delved into that, if you've not looked at that, I guarantee that it will make things in your life make sense, and it will open up doorways and pathways that you haven't expected. So healing your mother wounds to bring peace to our ancestors and peace to our future generations is the biggest gift that we can give, I think. So
for those that are tuning in and maybe are curious or wanting to there's this curiosity of wanting to go down this path of healing their own mother wounds and want to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
So the best place is I have a Facebook group, Mother Lines with Martine Shelley. It's a private group where just a place to be able to speak your truths, to be able to share the realness, the rawness, and the journeys and the experiences of growing in environments where there are wounds in your mother line. So my Facebook group is the best place. And I think that there's perhaps a link as well to a download which is a guide on, just a gentle guide on sort of a way through healing mother wounds and finding that inner peace and stepping back into your authentic self.
Thank you so much in so many ways for this conversation, for being here with me. It's been so like soul nurturing to be in this conversation with you. So thank you so much for this. There's so much love that I have for you in this conversation, and I'm just so grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. It's been lovely.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.